Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 35. Doc here with you. I am actually on the road right now. Ryan and I are on our way to New Jersey for a little conference, so please excuse the fact that it is not as quiet as it typically is, but hopefully we can still bring you some value. So, episode 35. This episode is titled, You Can Have Your Cake and Eat It Too. So, for January, as we talked about last week, we've been discussing 10 lessons to make January your BIA without diet, exercise, or sleep. Okay, so last week we gave you some implementable things to start making January your B, and we're going to extend that a little bit today. And we're going to talk a little bit about cheats, treats, rewards, and vices. So, what I mean by this is a lot of times we get so stuck on something that we are doing that we focus on treating ourselves, if it's diet, we talk about cheat meals, and we kind of get stuck on that too much to where it can actually really compromise our progress, it can compromise our journey. And I just wanted to kind of start with cheat meals because cheat meals is one that everyone knows very well. So for those of you who don't know what a cheat meal is, a cheat meal is basically a day or a single meal that you implement into your nutrition throughout your week where you just basically eat whatever. You just go hog wild, pun intended, and you just don't worry about, you can eat any carbs you want, you can eat any sweets you want, any food that you choose from. And some people make one meal out of this, some people make an entire day out of this. And this was really brought, trainers were kind of one group that brought this to the front because, trust me, as a coach, it can be very hard for people to stick to a nutritional plan. So this was one way to do it. But another group that really made this popular were those like bodybuilders, or those who are, in a sport where there's weight classes and stuff like that. And the reason being they would do this is because, like for bodybuilders and fitness models, their diets are so strict all the time that the only way they could stay sane throughout this was to implement a said cheat meal or cheat day. So this really then became popular, especially when the internet blew up, because everybody sees, oh, you mean I have a meal that I can eat whenever I want? And then, of course, there's other celebrities out there, such as, Michael Phelps or Dwayne Johnson, as you all know, I've talked about millions of times before. But basically, these are people that they put these 10,000 calorie plus meals out, and they're very fit, they're very in shape, they're shredded. And so everyone wants to be like them, so everyone thinks, I can do that too. And there is some problems with following this. And the first thing I want to talk about is the treating yourself mentality and the consequences that come with that. So the reason that having this quote unquote treating yourself mentality can create problems down the road is, for one, it creates a bad relationship with whatever course you are currently on. So again, for like bodybuilders, because their diets are so strict, or fitness models, or even actors when they're preparing for a role, because their diets are so strict, they feel the need to implement a cheat meal to keep them sane, to keep them actually enjoying what they're doing. And, again, this creates a really bad relationship. This creates a bad relationship with prepping. This creates a bad relationship with, the journey that you are on. And so people will constantly feel this need to refer back to this reward or refer back to this treat because they're not enjoying the process. And so if this is you, I really, want you to consider sitting down and taking time to think about, maybe I don't enjoy this. Maybe I should switch something up, because if I am constantly in the need to feel rewarding myself for a treat, then, maybe I do need to find a better way to do that, or ask better questions, or, just really pick a whole new route altogether. So another reason that, having this quote unquote treating yourself mentality can create bad consequences is it creates temptation. We all know the kid example of, if you tell a kid to not touch a hot stove, what do? They touch the hot stove. If you tell someone not to do something, there is actually psychological studies that support that telling someone not to do something, it actually makes them want to do it more, especially like teenagers and adolescents, because there's a rebel factor in there. So, excuse me. realize that, you create this temptation, and even though you've created this restriction, you are that much more willing to go against yourself because you will justify it later on. A third thing to add to this is, again, why do you need to have a treat? Why do you need to have a cheat day or a reward? And again, the first question I ask with this is, you need to ask, are you, just taking the wrong path? But the other question is, maybe the destination is wrong altogether. What is the reason that you want to, you know, get a promotion at this, or make more money at this, or lose weight here, or look better here, get stronger? Because if your destination is all wrong, then it doesn't matter what you do or how you do it. Treating yourself is just eventually going to lead you spinning your wheels and going in the wrong direction. So in addition to this, I want to talk about rewards versus vices. This is another post that I mentioned this past week. So rather than me try to explain it, let's use the dictionary's meaning, for instance. So rewards are something given or received in return or compensation for a service, merit, or hardship. So for you yourself, you feel like you've performed some sort of service, merit, or hardship, and so you should be compensated for that. Now, there's nothing wrong with giving yourself just, for being happy with and fulfilled with the actions that you've committed, or even how committed you've been to your process. But just realize that if we keep trying to have this compensation game as far as the reward goes, then we can put ourselves down the wrong road. Now, again, there is nothing wrong, as I mentioned earlier this week. One of my plans to make January better is to actually plan a big getaway, big vacation at the end of January, because it gives you something to look forward to. It gives you something to strive toward. Gives you a little bit of a dopamine kick and a serotonin kick throughout the process. But again, don't make that the only reason that you're doing what you're doing, because then you're just not going to enjoy the process. Now, something else I mentioned this week are vices. And this is a bad trap that we can fall into. There's vices out there, whether it's alcohol, it can be drugs, even exercise can become a vice for people, and they can create an unhealthy relationship. And there's plenty of other things that you can do. But for vices, the dictionary says, are a bad habit or practice from a particular form of brevity, okay, or depravity, excuse me. And so what that means is we feel deprived, so that is why we feel we need this vice. A lot of people that say, like, let's use alcohol, for instance, they use the vice of alcohol because they truly feel unhappy. And so this at least helps them to relax a little bit, helps to enjoy a little bit. And so creating these vices or rewards can really put us in a downward spiral. Now, how do we combat this, though? How do we make it to where we don't need this, and we don't need to have cheat meals and all this stuff? Well, one thing you need to do is learn how to implement breaks. I don't mean cheating. I don't mean, or anything like that. I don't mean completely, having a vice or having a reward you go to, and that you just, you fall off the deep end for a while and then jump back on. What I mean by breaks is give yourself, give your quote unquote willpower, give your brain a break. If we are constantly using up our serotonin all the time because we're constantly striving for things, this can really put us into a situation where we don't feel any fulfillment, we don't feel any happiness, we don't feel any reward mentally for the things that we accomplish. And the reason this happens is because, just like everything else, just like calories, just like, again, willpower, just like energy, the chemoreceptors in your brain, the chemistry that goes on in the body, our overall emotions, they have a battery limit. They have a point where they will run empty, and when they hit that point, you're pretty much screwed. Like, that's it. And that's why, if you've ever been someone who has been striving for something, whether it's a race or a competition, it could be a project at work, it could be a certain project with the house. At first when you start this, you're very excited, you're energetic because you can't wait to see the finished product, you can't wait to go through the quote unquote journey. But then what happens is, halfway through, you lose that motivation. You lose that because now, everything's starting to take a toll on you. Your energy levels are running low in all of those realms. And the worst part is this could lead to, um, the worst case scenario of burnout. And, granted, if this has to do with your job, if this has to do with your health and wellness journey, life, being a parent, whatever you want to insert in there, and we fail to recognize how this can actually impact performance. So, how we can, the first last week whenever we talked on the podcast, and everything up to this point, we talked about the perfect picture. And again, not to sound redundant, but the perfect picture is about creating it, taking 3 actionable, implementable things you want to focus on from that perfect picture, and then throwing it away. And so here's how we implement these strategies without recreating this picture perfect mentality. And that's typically what rewards will do, is if we can't have, the perfect picture, then we're going to reward ourselves the whole way because, we want the perfect picture, we can't have that. So things that I challenge you to do is, for one, go back to your 3 original action plans. Again, circle those 3 things that you want to work towards and break them down. And you want to break them down to the most simplest form, and those are things that you should be working on for this month. Those 3 simple things you should be doing every day to get you closer to that goal. And that's what I want you to focus on. Focus on those things. Sometimes we overwhelm ourselves with where we want to be, that this eventually leads to, feeling like of helplessness, and that we're never going to get there, and we're never going to accomplish what we want to do. And this kills our energy, like I mentioned. And this also helps to reduce the need for either the gas it or break it mentality. And I've talked about this before, but I know for myself, I'm always wanting to hit the gas because I don't know what it's like to cruise. So I either hit the gas and I gas really hard, or if I have no motivation with something whatsoever, I jack the emergency brake and don't do anything. And so a lot of us get this mentality that we either need to gas it or we need to brake it. Well, instead, learning how to do a cruise mentality for little bits of time, little bits of period, to eliminate that exhaustion, eliminate that burnout that can come from it. And, finally, learn to take breaks. Now, I'm not saying hit the brakes, but learn to take breaks from, trying to hit these big audacious goals, hit these big audacious moments all the time, and giving yourself some time. Research shows that actually implementing diet breaks will help you to lose weight and lose body fat faster and keep it off more. And it can be the same thing with whatever you're challenging yourself to do in January, whatever New Year's resolution you set, whatever idea or goal that you're shooting for. Taking breaks along the way can really help with that. Now, again, like I mentioned before, I'm not saying completely jump off the wagon and burn the bus down. I'm saying to take little breaks to keep yourself sane, and don't make it to where you feel like you need to have a reward or you need to have a treat all the time and completely sabotage everything just because maybe you are, maybe you're setting the expectations too high. Maybe you are overwhelming yourself. So, as you guys know, we always love to finish this podcast with 3 takeaways. So, the 3 takeaways I'm going to give you. Number 1, look at current action plan in regards to current circumstances. So, like I mentioned last week, sometimes we set an action plan, sometimes we set, a journey without understanding that life always manages to get in the way. We create this perfect picture because this is what would happen if we do everything we're doing and everything stays perfect. This is where we should land. Well, sorry to tell you, things do not always stay perfect. There's going to be things that come up. There's going to be changes. There's going to be new challenges you didn't expect or anticipate. And so, you need to look at your current action plan and look at your current situation and circumstances and come to peace with that. Number 2, celebrate little wins along the way without relying on a vice. And I say little wins because along the way, we need to sometimes we want to reward ourselves because that's the only way that we feel like we've had a win. But, you know, if you went that entire week with doing those 3 little implementable steps every day, celebrate that. That's a good little win for you. That's, you are on the right path. You're doing all the right things. You are getting in touch with compounding. And so really learn to enjoy that. And whenever you feel the need for a vice, whenever you feel the need that you have to give yourself something to reward yourself for your behavior, realize that maybe your action plan and maybe the process is not right. Maybe you have to switch things up a little bit. Maybe you have to adjust and adapt. And number 3, take breaks. They're good for you. For the month of January, maybe not. As self-help likes to say, you can do anything in a month. But if you hit the end of January and you want to keep going with this, realize that along the way you might need to give yourself some break. You might need to give yourself some breathing room and a big exhale to keep moving forward. And so, again, this is all meant so that you can have your cake and eat it too. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't, keep putting yourself through the ringer. Don't keep these high expectations and feel like you can just go along the way without needing some sort of break or without needing some sort of change or adaptation in your journey. Well, that's it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this long-ass drive to New Jersey. Love you all. Check you out next week.